Shalom, brothers and sisters. And once again, this is Brother Brandon Judah Duffy, representing the Solid Foundation International Ministries. That's Solid Foundation International Ministries. Okay? And on tonight, we're going to be going over Daniel chapter 8 concerning Daniel's vision of the ram and the he-goat. Now, we're not going to go over the whole entire chapter. Okay? We're just going to skip around. We're going to cherry pick the chapter, but I'm going to explain each and every detail that I go into concerning the verses out of Daniel chapter 8, okay? Well, let's get started. Okay, when you read Daniel chapter 8, it's basically talking about the vision of the ram and the he-goat. Okay, when you skip down to verse 3 out of Daniel chapter 8, it says, "Then I lifted up my eyes, and I saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram." Okay, we're going to stop right there. Now, that ram is basically talking about the Persian Mede Empire. That ram is talking about the Persian Mede Empire. And if you go on to read, it says that the ram has two horns. That one was high and one was low. One was higher than the other. Well, those two horns are basically King Cyrus and King Darius, okay, of the Persian Mede Empire. Those are the two horns, okay. I'm just going over this. Like I said, I'm cherry picking Daniel chapter 8 for the ones that don't have edification on this chapter. I'm not going to spend all night on this for the sake of time. So when you skip down to verse 5, it says, "And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west." It says on the face of the whole earth. So that he-goat is basically talking about Greece, the Greeks, the Grecian Empire. Okay. It says it touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. So that he-goat that had a notable horn between his eyes, that take you to verse 21 out of Daniel chapter 8. Okay. Concerning Daniel chapter 8 verse 5, when it says the he-goat that has the horn between his eyes, let's look at verse 21 out of Daniel chapter 8. Okay, verse 21 basically says that and the rough goat is the king of Grecia. Okay, so it says, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So when you go back to Daniel chapter 8 verse 5, now we know what their horn is that's between his eyes. Concerning Daniel chapter 8 verse 5, when it says the goat had a notable horn between his eyes, that notable horn is verse 21 out of Daniel chapter 8. That's the first king of Grecia, which is none other than Alexander the Greek. Okay, Alexander the Greek being the first so-called white man, the Edomite, to begin rulership in the earth, beginning with the Greeks. All right, that is none other than Alexander the Greek, which can be found in the book of Maccabees, first Maccabees, concerning the apocryphal books that the Roman Catholic Church took out the Bible during the 18th century. Okay, all right, so that's talking about Alexander the Greek concerning Daniel chapter 8 verse 5. I'm going to skip around some more. All right. And let's look at verse 8 out of Daniel chapter 8. It says, "Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken." So Daniel chapter 8 verse 8 tells you that when the he-goat, when he waxed very great, when he was strong, the horn on the he-goat, that great horn was broken. Now, who was that great horn? That great horn is none other than Alexander the Greek. Okay, that's that great horn that was broken. Okay, because when you go into Maccabees, first Maccabees, the first chapter, when you read the first chapter of first Maccabees, it tells you that Alexander basically, he fell sick and died, man. So I'm going to get that for you concerning that horn that was broken. This is first Maccabees concerning the apocryphal books. First Maccabees chapter 1. Okay. And It says out of chapter 1 and 1 out of First Maccabees, and it happened after Alexander the son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. So we know that Alexander the Greek was the first Edomite, first so-called white man, all right, to begin Edomite rulership in the earth, starting with the history of the Greeks. Okay, now if you continue to read on down, it says out of verse 2 out of First Maccabees chapter 1, it says, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. Verse 3, and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, and so much that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. Okay, let's look at verse 4 out of first chapter of Maccabees, First Maccabees. Let's look at verse 4. It says, and he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. Now, verse 5 out of the first book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 5 is what you should pay attention to, because verse 5 basically tells you that, and after these things he fell sick, and after he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Okay, yeah, because when you go back to Daniel chapter 8, verse 8, it tells you about that great horn that was broken. Okay, I'm just giving you the precept to Daniel chapter 8, verse 8. The precept to Daniel chapter 8, verse 8 concerning that broken horn is a First Maccabees, okay, out of the apocryphal books. First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 5. After these things he fell sick. That was Alexander. That was that horn that was broken concerning Daniel chapter 8, verse 8. Okay, so let's keep it moving. I'm just going to cherry pick Daniel chapter 8 so you can get clear edification. Okay, so now we know that great horn that was broken was none other than Alexander. Okay, we also know out of Daniel chapter 8, verse 3, that Ram is the Persian Mede Empire. Out of Daniel chapter 8, verse 5, that He-Goat or the Grecian Empire. And Daniel chapter 8 and verse 8, like I just said, that horn that was broken between the goat's eyes was Alexander when he fell sick and died, concerning the first book of Maccabees chapter 1 verse 5. And we're going to continue with verse 8 out of Daniel chapter 8. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, that was the Greeks, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, that was Alexander when he fell sick and died. It says when that horn was broken, it says, and for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven. Okay, so the four notable ones that came up towards the four winds of heaven is Alexander, four generals that he departed his kingdom to. Okay, all right, because we know we went over Alexander already. Alexander the Greek, some say Alexander the Great, he lived only about 33 years. Okay, he lived from like 356 to 323 BC. Okay, and Alexander was the son of King Philip II of Macedonia. In 333 and 336 BC, at the age of 20, Alexander, at the age of 20, he assumed and command a Greek army. Okay, he commanded of the Greek army at the age of 20, and like I said, he put down a rebellion in Greece. He began to basically advance, but something happened later on down the line, man. Okay, he died suddenly at the age of 33 from an unknown illness. And like I said, we went over Alexander's death concerning that horn that was broken. So he died at the age of 33, and after the age of before he died, man, he parted his kingdom towards his four generals. That can also be found in the first book of Maccabees, the first chapter, beginning with the 6th verse. It says, wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and he parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So before he died at the age of 33, Alexander the Greek parted his kingdom among his four generals, man. And his four generals is none other than Seleucus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Las Omegas. Okay, those are his 4 generals that he parted his kingdom towards. So when you go back to Daniel chapter 8, that's basically speaking of the 4 notable horns. Okay, Daniel chapter 8, that great horn was broken, and 4 horns came up out of it. Those are the 4 generals of Alexander the Greek: Ptolemy, Seleucus, Cassander, and Las Omegas. Okay, it says, and let's go back to Daniel chapter 8 and 8. It says the great horn was broken, and for it came 4 notable ones. We went over that, towards the 4 winds of heaven. Daniel chapter 8 verse 9. It says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great. Okay, let's stop right there. That little horn is none other than King Antiochus IV. King Antiochus IV, the son of King Antiochus III. That little horn is King Antiochus IV, okay, which waxed exceedingly great towards the south and towards the east, towards the pleasant land. Okay, verse 10, it says it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts of the stars to the ground, and it stomped upon them. Those stars that it cast down were the southern kingdom of Israel, which is none other than Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. It's also known as the Hellenistic period. That's when King Alexander IV, not Alexander, Salakia. King Antiochus IV, okay, cast down the stars of the to the ground, because those stars were the southern kingdom of Israel, which were the Jews, and King Antiochus IV Hellenized the Jews. He Hellenized the Jews in the first book of Maccabees, the first chapter. He Hellenized the Jews. This is also called the Abomination of Desolation, when he Hellenized the Jews. Let's look at verse 11. It says, yes, he magnified himself even to the prince of the hosts, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. What was taken away? Let's see what was taken away. It said out of Daniel chapter 8 verse 11, it says he magnified himself. Yeah, King Antiochus IV magnified himself, and it says, and to the prince of the hosts, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So yeah, that's talking about the abomination of desolation. Okay, that's what that's talking about, the abomination of desolation. How do we know that? We're going to show you concerning Daniel chapter 8 verse 11, when it says the daily sacrifices were taken away. We're going to show you that in the first book of Maccabees chapter 1. We're going to show you beginning with verse 10. It says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes. Epiphanes means chosen of God, because he thought he was chosen of God. Okay, it says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Okay, now King Antiochus IV was the 8th of the Seleucid kings. Okay, King Antiochus the 4th, he was the 8th out of the Seleucid kings. Okay, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Okay, now we was going over Daniel chapter 11, how it was speaking about the daily sacrifices that were taken away. So let's continue to read. Okay, let's look at chapter 20 out of First Maccabees chapter 1. Let's look at out of First Maccabees chapter 1. Let's look at verse 20. Verse 20. It says, and after that King Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel in Jerusalem with a great multitude, and he entered proudly into the sanctuary, and he took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof. Verse 22, and the table of the showbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold and the veil and the crowns and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, and all in which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. Okay, let's stop on verse 23 out of 1 Maccabees chapter 1. So you can see right there, and let's go back to Daniel chapter 11. Let's go back to Daniel chapter 8 verse 11. That's Daniel chapter 8 verse 11. Let's go back to that. So when it says the daily sacrifice was taken away, we just gave you that concerning 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 20, stopping on the 23rd verse. We gave you that concerning the daily sacrifices that was taken away. This is called Abomination of Desolation. All right. So it says that the sacrifices were taken away and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. All right. Let's look at verse 12 out of Daniel chapter 8. And the host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and it prospered. Okay. So let's go back to 1 Maccabees chapter 1 concerning this abomination of desolation. Concerning how King Antiochus IV, which is the little horn out of Daniel chapter 8, which is that little horn. Let's go back how he basically took away the daily sacrifice, man. We're going to show you that. We're going to show you some more out of 1 Maccabees chapter 1. All right. Okay, let's look at verse 40 out of 1 Maccabees chapter 1. It says, as has been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Okay, this gonna tell you how King Antiochus IV Hellenized the Jews, man. Beginning with the 41st verse out of 1 Maccabees chapter 1. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. It says, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yes, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. For the king hath sent letters by messengers into Jerusalem and the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Okay, so this is the Hellenistic period. Okay, and when King Antiochus IV, when he took over, man, and when he Hellenized the Jews, he Hellenized the southern kingdom, which is Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. That's why we was telling you about Daniel chapter 8. Out of Daniel chapter 8 verse 10, it says he waxed great even to the hosts of heaven, and he cast down some of the stars to the ground, man, because the stars that he cast down were the southern kingdom of Israel, which was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. All right, Israel is likened to stars. Okay, so he cast them down during the desolation abomination, man. Okay, that's when he cast them down. Or you can say the abomination of desolation, or some may say the Hellenistic period. That's when the daily sacrifice concerning Daniel chapter 8 verse 11, that's when the daily sacrifices were taken away, man, because we showed you that concerning 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 42, everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. And it says that many Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed idols and profaned the Sabbath, man. So you can see that King Antiochus, he wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, that everyone should leave his laws. So he took away their daily sacrifices, man. And that's what Daniel chapter 8 verse 11 is speaking of. King Antiochus being that little horn that waxed great. that little horn that waxed exceedingly great towards the south and towards the east and towards the pleasant land. Okay? And that's what it's talking about. So let me get you more out of First Maccabees chapter 1. Let me get you more out of this. We're going to cherry pick some verses. Okay, so we left off First Maccabees chapter 1. We left off with the 50th verse when it says, whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he should die. Okay, because he Hellenized the southern kingdom. He Hellenized the Jews. All right. Let's skip down a little bit. Let's go to verse 53. Okay. It says, and drove the Israelites in secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for secure. Now, verse 54, it says, now the 15th day of the month, Casselu. Now, Casselu is the month of November, okay? Casselu is none other than the 9th month, which today we call November. We all know that November is not the 11th month. Okay, November actually the 9th month. We know that the so-called white man changed times and laws, but when you see the 15th day of the month of Casselu out of First Maccabees chapter 1 verse 54, Casselu is November, which is the 9th month, and the 15th day of the month, and 145th year. In the 145th year, they set up the Abomination of Desolation, man. This is what this is all about. Concerning Daniel chapter 8, I'm just giving you precepts out of the first book of Maccabees. Okay, so he set up the Abomination of Desolation upon the altar. He burnt idols. He upon the altar, he built altars throughout the cities of Judah and on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. Okay, and when they had rent in pieces the books of the law, they burned them with fire, man, because they was also getting rid of the Hebrew records, man. It says, and whosoever was found with any book of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king commandment was that they should be put to death. This is talking about, man, the Hellenistic period. And it's talking about the Abomination of Desolation, man, that Daniel spoke of in chapter 8, concerning that little horn that waxed great, that cast down the stars to the ground, man. That's how he cast them down, by Hellenizing them, by taking away their daily sacrifices, taking away their ceremonial laws, their civil laws, their dietary laws. He took away that, man. King Antiochus IV, the surname Epiphanes, he took away that from the southern kingdom. All right. Let's look at verse 59 out of Maccabees chapter 1. It says, now the 25th day of the month, they sacrificed upon the altar, which was upon the altar of the Most High. This is what they did, man. Okay. So this is talking about the Abomination of Desolation, concerning Daniel chapter 8 verse 11, when it says, yes, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And we just read about how King Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, how he took away basically how he took away the Jews' customs, and how he basically wrote out to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, how they should leave their laws. Okay, King Antiochus IV, surname Epiphanes, did that, man. That's that wicked root. That's that little horn that waxed great. Like I said, he was the 8th person out of the Seleucid kings. He the one that instituted the Abomination of Desolation. He the one that instituted the Hellenistic period, man. All right. King Antiochus IV. He the one that did that. All right. Okay. So we're going to continue to move on. Okay. So about 25 kings of the Seleucid Empire, you could say it was 25 kings of the Seleucid Empire in his lifetime, from about 320 to 80 BC. It was about 25 kings of the Seleucid Empire. All right, but one king was like was really infamous. Okay, and that king out of those 25 that was real infamous was Antiochus the fourth. Okay, Epiphanes, that was him. Out of those 25 Seleucid kings, he lived about 215 to 164 BC. He reigned about 175 to 164 BC. Okay, and Antiochus Epiphanes, he was against the people of Judah, the children of Judah. He was against the Israelites. He was against the Hebrews, man. And he orchestrated and instituted the Abomination of Desolation, man. Okay? That's what Daniel chapter 8 is talking about. But many people get a misunderstanding, man. So I don't have time to just go into a long lesson. But I'm trying to hit over Daniel chapter 8, certain verses that you may not understand, to let you to help you to understand. Okay, so we can see that King Antiochus the fourth was against the people of God, man. Let's look at Daniel chapter. Let's look at we in Daniel chapter 8, and let's look at verse 13. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto the certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden on the foot? So this is what the saint, one of the saints, is asking the Most High. The saints is speaking, and the saint said basically, how long shall this be? How long shall this vision concerning this abomination of desolation, how long shall this be? Let's look at verse 14 out of Daniel chapter 8. He said unto me, until 2,300 days, man, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So basically you could say 2,300 days, which is over 6 years, that Antiochus, King Antiochus the fourth, persecuted the Most High's people, man. 2,300 days. King Antiochus IV was persecuting the Most High's people. He said basically that's how long it will be until the sanctuary be cleansed. So who cleansed the sanctuary? We know that Judas Maccabees, he cleansed the sanctuary, man. Concerning the first book of Maccabees, we can go in the 4th chapter. Let's go in the 4th chapter concerning the first book of Maccabees to show you who cleansed the sanctuary, man, after the abomination of desolation that was instituted by King Antiochus IV, which is surnamed Epiphanes. Let's go into first Maccabees chapter 4 to edify you who cleansed the temple. All right. Okay, first Maccabees chapter 4. We're going to begin with verse 36. It says, then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. So Judas Maccabees and his brothers, man, they the one that cleansed the temple. They the one that cleansed the temple. This is what Daniel spoke of out of chapter 8, verse 14. When one of the saints said, how long shall this be concerning the abomination of desolation? He said unto me, 2,300 days. He said after 2,300 days, he said, shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So after 2,300 days, which is over 6 years, after 2,300 days of Antiochus IV persecuting the Most High's people, this is when the sanctuary would be cleansed concerning the abomination of desolation. And this can be found in 1 Maccabees chapter 4 verse 36. And we're going to read on down. So then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Upon this, and all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altars profaned, and the gates burned up, and the shrubs growing in the courts, as in a forest or in one of the mountains, yes, and the priests and the priests' chambers pulled down. It says they rented their clothes and made great lamentation and cast ashes upon their heads and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces and blew an alarm with the trumpets and cried toward heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortresses until he had cleansed the sanctuary, man. Okay. So let's skip down. So we can see that Judas Maccabeus and his brethren, man, they cleansed the sanctuary concerning Daniel chapter 8, verse 13 and 14. Concerning Daniel chapter 8, verses 13 and 14. Judas Maccabeus and his brothers cleansed the temple, man. Let's look at verse 52 out of 1 Maccabees chapter 1. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month of Casleu, which we went over that, the 9th month being November, the 25th day, which is November the 25th, it says, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made. I'm just skipping around chapter 4 of 1 Maccabees. Okay, let's look at 1 Maccabees chapter 4 verse 56. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold, with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Okay. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that days of dedication of the altar should be kept in their seasons from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month of Casleu, that's November 25th, man, with mirth and gladness. So you can see that Judas Maccabeus and his brothers cleansed the temple, man, concerning Daniel chapter 8 verse 14. They cleansed the temple. Okay, and that's also known as the Feast of Dedication. All right, that's also known as the Feast of Dedication. All right, the victory and cleansing the temple is commemorated by the Jews today by an annual festival. Some people call it the Hanukkah, the Feast of Hanukkah, but this is a dedication of victory and cleansing of the temple that is commemorated by the Jews. All right. So, like I said, that pretty much sums everything up, man. If y'all didn't understand certain passages in the Daniel chapter 8, like I said, I didn't go into all the verses. I was just picking out some of the verses that most people say they have a hard time understanding. You know. So that little horn out of Daniel chapter 8, that little horn that verse 9 speaks of, is none other than King Antiochus IV, man, which was surnamed Epiphanes, that Hellenized the Jews. He also King Antiochus IV, which surnamed is Epiphanes. He also went into the temple. He went into the Jerusalem temple. He erected an altar dedicated to Zeus, and he sacrificed swine's flesh in the temple, man. King Antiochus IV did that. He did that. All right. So that's what it's speaking about, okay? He did that. Like I say, King Antiochus IV, surname Epiphanes, I want to say he did this in 167 BC, sacrificing a pig to the pagan god Zeus in the temple of the Most High. That was the second temple that was rebuilt by Ezra and Nehemiah when the people of Judah had first returned to Jerusalem. You know what I'm saying? He did that, man. Okay? So that pretty much sums it up. Hope you brothers and sisters were edified. Once again, Brother Brandon Judah Matt Duffy, Representing the Solid Foundation International Ministries, Shalom.